everybody, my name is Emily, and over the next 8 weeks I'm going to be building this boat. This is an Eastport nesting pram. It's going to be a sailboat. It's made by Chesapeake Light Craft, is the company that makes it. And I'm really excited about this boat for a few reasons. The first reason is it means that now my husband and I, when we're out cruising in the Bahamas and Central America, we're going to have 2 dinghies. So we're going to be a 2 dinghy family. Right now we have 1 aluminum dinghy and we have to kind of go both of the same places at the same time. So this is going to give me a little bit of independence and allow us to have 2 dinghies. Second reason I'm really excited about this boat is it's so versatile. After I build it, I'm going to cut it in half. This is part of the plan, part of the design. The front half of the boat nests inside the back end of the boat, and it only takes up about 4 by 4 feet on our deck, so it's going to be really easy for us to store this boat. Also, it's going to be able to sail, I'm going to be able to row it, we're going to get a little motor we can put on the back of it, so it's going to be a really versatile little boat. And the last reason I'm really excited about this build is I'm going to do it pretty much myself. Eastport nesting prams can be purchased as a kit or as a set of plans. Now if I were to get a kit, I would get all the wood pieces I need already pre-laser cut. I would just bring them together and put them together according to the instructions. But I've chosen to just do the plans. So in this set of plans we have a few different types of views or drawings or instructions that are going to help us along the way as we're fabricating these parts. The first type is just these drawings with dimensions on them that's going to show us what the boat actually looks like when it's complete. So those are really helpful. Then there's a lot of parts where we have an actual pattern that we're going to trace or transfer onto the plywood and then cut it out. And then there are some parts, and this is the part where I've got to be really accurate, where I just have dimensions. So I have to transfer a bunch of dots and make a lot of square measurements to actually draw the part out myself and then cut it out. So these are going to help us along the way. Also sent with the set of plans is this kind of how-to book. It's got a list of materials that I'm going to need. It's got some essential reading that talks about how epoxy works, how stitch and glue technique works, which is really helpful to me because I've never done this before. It's also got some illustrated instructions that step-by-step everything that you need to do. So that's also going to be really helpful. So this is what I've been sent. This is what you get when you get a set of plans, and this is what I'm going to work with. I've never built a boat before, but I think with all these plans and everything that's available to me, I'm going to be able to do it. Girls can build stuff too, right? I've got my husband, he's built lots of dinghies before in his life, so he's going to kind of keep an eye on things, make sure I avoid any disasters, I guess I'll say. I also have some friends who have some of the tools I need, like a table saw, and my in-laws who live in New York usually have a house here in Florida where we are, and they're letting me use this carport area until they get back. So we'll have cover from the hot Florida sun and the rain, and we're getting a hurricane in 2 days, so there's that. I'm hoping I can get all these pieces traced out and put in safe cover before that comes. So I'm going to share the process all along the way with you. I know there's other videos out there of people building these prams, but I think I can give you an interesting view as a girl, as somebody who's never built a boat before, and I'm going to show you the good, bad, and ugly along the way and give you my impression at the end, let you know how long it takes, let you know the budget, all that good stuff that we normally do on our channel. Let's build the Eastport nesting pram. Let's take a look at the wood that we've chosen for this project. Now CLC recommends plywood made of mahogany and solid mahogany for most of these parts, and spruce for the mast. When I went to the marine plywood store, they had something called red Meranti. They also had something called akume. Akume is much lighter than the red Meranti, and we're looking for a lightweight boat that we can really store and transport. So we went with the akume. It's this nice blonde pink color. So we have 3 sheets of 6mm akume and 1 sheet of 9mm. The 6mm is going to be used for the side panels, the bottom panel, some of those parts, and then the thicker plywood is going to be used for the thwarts and some of the more substantial parts. Now for the solid wood parts, again, CLC recommends mahogany, and I could go out and buy some mahogany, but it just so happens that we had some cypress in our shed. It's a plentiful wood in Florida and bugs hate it, so we thought it'd be a great choice for the mast and some of those other parts, and it is a little bit lighter weight as well. So we've got this to fabricate some solid wood parts out of. That's going to take care of the majority of the boat. There are some other smaller pieces that are meant to be made out of scrap lumber, and we've got some pieces of oak. We've got a few pieces of this really cool silver bollywood, which Clark used to make our wind generator. If you're interested in that project, that's a whole nother thing. You can check out the video up here in the top corner and check out our homemade wind generator and how we make power on our boat other than solar. So those are the woods we've got. Because we're working from plans and not a kit, we essentially have to make our own kit, so that involves a few different steps in fabricating those parts. We've got some millwork we need to do with our solid piece of wood. We have some lofting we have to do to get the plans onto the plywood. Then we're going to cut out all of our pieces from the plywood, and there's a little more finishing, some routing, some other things we have to do to clean it up so that we have all our parts and we can start assembling. Let's get to it. Alright, let's start with the millwork. We have this board of cypress. It measures 2 inches by 6 inches. That's almost enough to do all of our pieces, so I'm going to start with that. I'm going to bring this to my friend Andrew's shop, and we're going to put it on the table saw. We've turned this into this, we've got our first set of parts. So let's take a look at what we've got here. This piece here is going to get cut into 2 skegs. Those are going to go on the bottom of the boat to keep it going straight through the water. Then we've got 4 pieces of wood here that are going to become our outwales. The patterns call it an outwale. Some people refer to it as gunnel, but these get sandwiched around the outside of the boat to give some strength and rigidity. Then, because it's a sailing rig, we have a boom and a yard. That's going to be these 2 pieces here after they're processed and finished. And this last hunk right here may or may not become the mast. The mast is 10 feet. This is only 8 feet, so I'm going to have to scarf in another piece in order to make it the right length. Or I may decide I want to do something different for the mast. So that's what we've got so far for cypress. Let's move on to the plywood. Okay, now we're going to do the lofting, which means we're going to transfer the paper plans onto the plywood, and for that we're going to need a few tools. We've got some measuring tools. I've got a square. I think I'm going to use that quite a bit. I have a 4-foot yardstick here, so that's going to come in handy. I also have this batten, which is just a multi-purpose piece of trim. It's flexible, so I'm going to be able to use that to draw a nice smooth curve on some of those pieces that I need to fabricate from just measurements. Then I've got a hammer and I've got a hook. The instructions call for an awl. I don't have an awl, so I'm going to use this hook to punch holes in the pattern and then use those holes to draw my lines, so that'll transfer those big plans that I have onto the plywood. Then I'll use the nails to put nails into those holes, so then I can use the batten to do the curve against the nails. Later, after I've done some of the parts, I need to secure 2 pieces of plywood together so that I can cut them at the same time. I'm going to use a rivet gun for that, so that's what this is for. I'm going to take 2 of the 6mm pieces of plywood and hold them securely together so that when I cut, I can cut out 2 thicknesses at once. So as you can see, we've put in over 50 nails and a big grid across the board, and these nails help us use this batten to push against those nails to make this gentle curve. And we've done that to lay out our 4 side pieces. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's going to be the shape of our side pieces of the boat. We're going to nail this sheet to the sheet underneath it and cut these out. So we have a right side and we have a left side. Then we have these pieces that I had to trace and transfer on here. Because they're normally laser cut as part of a kit, they left really big margins around the pieces. But I talked to my husband and we kind of did some problem solving and puzzling and decided this is a really great factory edge. So we just put some of these right on the edge, and we're going to have a lot of wood left over for some of those parts like the mast step and the other things that I might otherwise need to buy some more wood for. So I think we've made really economical use of the wood here. But we've got the sides done, and we've got a lot of the other large pieces done. A few things I learned in this process. Number one is to have a second person to help read off the measurements to you, so you don't have to keep looking back and forth from plan to wood. It also helps to have a second person when it comes to these really long stretches of curve, so that when you nail it down, you can help hold it against those nails and get a really crisp line. Also, I learned that you should pull out the nails when you're done, because otherwise you'll get a nail through your foot, which wasn't very fun. Alright, so this is the last piece of 6mm plywood that we're working with. You can see I used the batten to do the bottom of the boat here. So we've got another piece that involved a grid and doing that. There are a few pieces that I noticed we have to cut out multiple pieces, and then we're going to end up laminating them together. And because we've got the rivet gun and we're going to cut out both side panels at the same time, I've chosen only to trace one of each of those, so that then I can take the leftover wood I have, rivet those together, and cut out the rudder blades at the same time. And there's skegs and some other things that have multiples on them, so we'll be able to be a little bit more efficient, and frankly it won't be as much work to trace every single pattern 3 different times. So hoping that'll save some time and some wood. Now we've got all the pieces traced out on our plywood. It's taken about a week to get to this point, but we had a hurricane that we had to stop for and restart for. We've actually still got feeder bands affecting our area right now, but it's pretty much just a little bit windy right now, so I'm going to go ahead and work on cutting this out. I've got my drill, I've got my pop rivet gun, and I've got a skill saw, a jigsaw to cut out the pieces. I'll start by drilling a hole in the plywood, and then I can use the pop rivet gun to join these pieces together. And that's why it's called a pop rivet. Alright. Well, unfortunately that did not go through the wood. That's not going to hold it for us. Alright, take 2 this time with clamps. And still not working. Turns out our rivets are just too small for this plywood, so I went ahead and got some clamps. And we're all clamped and ready to start cutting out our pieces. Alright, my first cut, of course, chipped off part of my plywood, so I'm just doing some practice cuts over here. Made some adjustments to the saw, increased the speed a little bit. Now I'm feeling a little good that I'm not going to screw this up completely. So here we go. There's my pencil mark. You can barely see it. I'm leaving the mark so I know that I'm on, but I'm pretty happy with that cut. That's pretty darn straight. I think I did a good job. We'll see if I can keep that going. This is a lot of work to get just a little bit of distance. We got a lot of distance to go. It's raining and the wind is blowing, but that's what happens when you build during a hurricane, I guess. I'm gonna keep going though. The wind isn't too bad, the rain isn't too bad, plywood's still dry. I think we can get this done tonight. Today is hot. It is 10 o'clock in the morning. The heat index is already like 97. So it's time to get to work. I'm hoping that I can get the rest of this cut out today. I've got these 2 pieces of the 6mm plywood. I've got another 6mm board, and then the 9mm. And some of those are also multiple, so it's a lot of work. But I'm excited because this is starting to look like a boat. I've got pieces here that are arced, and it's really cool to see this pattern, which is you know, this big on paper come to life as real pieces. I'm excited about that. Oh, by the way, I had a kitchen accident. This has nothing to do with the skill saw. I didn't cut myself. It's really just kind of a scrape that the Band-Aid won't stay on. So that's what the ace bandage is for. Don't worry, I'm fine.
Some of the cleanest plywood cuts I've ever seen in my life.
Really?
Yeah, I think part of it is you know, your innate ability, and
It's a woman's touch.
you're going slower. And I never bought the good marine plywood before. I always buy kind of the ratty stuff.
This is good plywood. Sweat? Check. No blood yet. I guess I punctured my foot, so I got blood. That's sweat.
How about tears?
It's gonna be really beautiful at the end. I'll just cry. It's so beautiful. These, my friends, are all of the side panels. Stack these up and get the other plywood out. This is the bottom of the boat. So I'm going to cut that out next. Wow, this is so much easier going through just one layer of wood. It is like, I'm like Superwoman now. Whoosh. That is the bottom of our boat. One more curve. Wow, this is a bigger boat than I thought. This is the bow transom. It's a little bit fiddly to cut it out because, as you can see, there's all these little teeth around the outside. Those are going to hold they're going to lock into the bottom piece, which we just cut out, and then those side pieces, 1, 2, 3, 4 of them. We've got a bow here, we've got a stern, and then we've got a middle. Alright, now we've got all the pieces at the bottom of the boat, and we've got our bow, our middle, and our stern. There's also a doubler that goes onto the bow and the stern to give it some more rigidity, and there's these handles that we're going to cut out. I waited to cut them out until we could clamp both of these pieces together and get them to really fit nice. As you can see, these little tabs that are cut out fit really nice and snugly on this bottom piece here. On the forward, though, it looks like the batten slipped when I traced this line, and it's actually a little bit too wide to fit in here. So I'm going to have to go back, retrace this line, and just shave the least little bit off this edge so that we can get a nice fit tight here. The part where we are going to rabbet all the edges, or one of the edges on each of these side pieces, and for that I'm going to use a 3/8 inch rabbeting bit, and I've got a clamp to help me keep the work in place. And I've discovered, after trying about 5 different pairs of safety glasses, that there aren't any safety glasses that I have that are keeping the dust from blowing in my eyeballs. So I'm going to use a scuba mask. I'm sure I look ridiculous, but it's the only thing that's going to work for me. So, here we go. joint, but it's not bad. These corners are rounded off a little bit, but I think epoxy is going to fix it. I think we're ready to start drilling holes and put this thing together. There's no crying boat building.